Hey guys, Mineral here to talk a little bit about the Overwatch League schedule and to discuss the concept of scheduled losses. Scheduled losses is a popular term in the NBA, but what does it entail? Well, over there, teams have to play back-to-backs, sometimes they play 3 times in 4 days, all while flying across the country. Needless to say, that makes preparation rather tough, which naturally leads to some aberrations. Occasionally, one team will be in the middle of such stretch while its opponent will have enjoyed the comfort of home court and rest. In the case that the disadvantaged team loses, that would classify as a scheduled loss. Let's take a quick glance at some statistics, as they may very well foreshadow what's on the horizon for the Overwatch League. For example, during the 2018-19 NBA season, teams that played 3 games in 4 nights performed significantly worse than the last game of such stretches. In fact, 20 teams saw a decrease in efficiency from their norm during such circumstances. In an article published in 2016, Jesse Skadillas shared the following stats on back-to-back games. According to his figures, teams who played back-to-back games but did so at home actually saw a 5.8% increase in win percentage, while teams that were on the road for a back-to-back saw a whopping 17.7% drop-off in win rate. So, do similar scheduled losses exist in the Overwatch League? No matter how good the scheduling is, Overwatch League is a global league and the concept of scheduled losses could very well enter our space very soon. To suggest that scheduled losses already exist would probably be unfair considering the sample size, but it's an interesting concept to investigate. After all, strength of schedule has become a popular talking point among fans in an attempt to add crucial context to results. Is your favorite team in a terrible slump and needs to hit the reset button, or is it simply going through a brutal stretch of opponents? To a certain extent, strength of schedule aids us in deciphering that riddle. The altered 7-game stage naturally leads to somewhat random short-term results. An unbalanced schedule might temporarily boost seemingly undeserving teams up the standings, while potential playoff contenders could get shredded by a brutal stretch. After all, only one win separated the 8th-ranked Boston and 16th-ranked Paris during Stage 1, which obviously means that every single game is that much more important. Having worked in the Overwatch League and been through the trenches of the grind, I wondered what kind of advantages could be gained through the schedule. Season 1 was very straightforward. Each team played twice every week. You played against 2 opponents with generally 3 to 5 days of preparation, depending on how your games that week would shake out. So there's no sizable inherent advantage any team could gain by playing less on a given week. However, I wanted to investigate whether back-to-back games would have any effect on the outcome of a game. The theory was that the team who is on a back-to-back generally wouldn't have time to practice between its games, while the other team could. To do this, I filtered through the games using the following criteria. I wanted to find out the outcome of a game during which one team plays its games back-to-back and the other team doesn't. This would eliminate all contests in which both teams played each other on a back-to-back, as well as games in which neither team was on a back-to-back. And there were 65 such games in Season 1. This, however, didn't seem to provide any advantages. The quote-unquote disadvantaged teams on back-to-backs actually went 36-29, winning 148 maps and dropping 127. If we were to exclude the Shanghai Dragons, who went winless in Season 1 and were disadvantaged in just one of those games while having the advantage in 7 contests, the statistics would look as following. Regardless of whether we choose to include the Dragons or not, there doesn't seem to be any real schedule advantages for any teams during Season 1. In practice, this also makes sense. Most teams in Season 1 prioritize their preparation correctly. For instance, if you were a lower tier team and your opponents for the week were the NYXL and Shanghai Dragons, you'd most certainly commit most of your resources to preparing for Shanghai, knowing that coming out of the week, 1-1 was the most realistic scenario. Similarly, if you were a title-contending team facing the same opponents, you'd likely trust that your giant skill advantage would yield victory over a weaker opponent, and you would invest heavily into preparation for the opponent standing between you and a 2-0 week. While the Season 1 schedule was equally hard for most teams, Season 2 is a little different. Teams play either 2, 1, or no games any given week, which might create a small competitive edge. Preparing for 2 opponents is very difficult, especially if the map pool is wide during that particular week, and if your 2 opponents play very different styles. When you have just 5 maps and 1 opponent to pour all your resources into, you should be prepared optimally, at least in theory. I chose to isolate certain games for Stage 1 of Season 2, looking for perceived advantages. The concept is very simple. The disadvantaged team in the matchup would have 2 games that week, while their opponents only 1. Interestingly, there were 28 such encounters in Stage 1, and the disadvantaged teams went 11-17, winning 53 maps and dropping 64. Teams who finished Stage 1 with a record under 500 had a 35% win rate in such games, while teams above 500 landed at 50%. The sample size of the new schedule is still too small to help us draw any real conclusions, and whether this trend is maintained across the entire regular season remains to be seen. Either way, it's just one interesting concept to start considering when adding context to games as they pertain to the schedule. With the Overwatch League introducing home and away games next year, it's likely teams will go on lengthy road trips, spend extended time away from friends and family, and won't have the luxury to sleep in their own beds for weeks. While home court advantage is practically non-existent with the league situated in LA, it certainly should be next year. Practicing on the road will inevitably be tedious, especially considering the intercontinental flights. Either way, that's some food for thought. Thank you for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed the video, subscribe, follow me on Twitter. Let me know in the comments what you think about it, and if there's any other type of content you guys are yearning for. And see you next time.